What's up, everybody, and welcome to the BenchWarmers Podcast, where we discuss everything NFL, all the way from free agency through the draft, regular season, postseason, all the way to the Super Bowl. Every week, this is going to be where you hear it first. All right, my name is Tanner. I'm joined by my host Caleb, and
What's
today
going
we're going to
on?
start off talking about. Let's start off talking about Danielle Hunter to the Houston Texans. He has a 2-year, $49 million contract with $48 million of it guaranteed. How do you feel about that?
I mean, almost all of it guaranteed. That's wild. But Danielle Hunter is an amazing player. Um, how many sacks did he have last season?
So last season, Danielle Hunter had 16 and a half sacks with 4 forced fumbles.
I mean, you can't ask for much better than that. That's what you hope out of an elite pass rusher, which he is. And it makes sense why the Vikings would not resign him because Vikings they're kind of like kind of a rebuild situation with they're having to move on Kirk Cousins. They're in a new looking for a new quarterback.
Agreed.
They're trying to get a lot younger, and Daniel Hunter being age like 30,
Yeah,
he's
absolutely, and that's what I was going to
not a
talk
long
about.
term
He,
plan.
he he's turning 30 this year. So how do you feel that's going to progress and work out for him as he gets older throughout the season?
I mean, I think he definitely hit an amazing season last season, so it's not like he's the age hasn't hit him yet.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I think it's going to help him a lot being on Houston Texans, which has a lot of young people, especially on the defensive line, where he will help mentor them and coach them and become the elite player like he became. And
Right, right. And
I think
speaking of young with the Texans, I mean, we seen last year, C.J. Stroud won an Offensive Rookie of the Year. We've seen just how dominant they can be. I mean, I don't think anybody. I mean, at least for myself, I didn't expect the Texans to come in and shine the way they did, especially on offense. So with the fact that the run that they had, we know the offense can put up numbers. We've seen that in the playoffs, but on the defensive side is where they really needed help. And I think signing Danielle Hunter is going to be that major gap for them. I definitely see them going back to the playoffs this year, probably even a conference championship game. I mean, I think that's the minimum for them.
yeah, it's CJ Stroud is him.
Yeah,
CJ Stroud is that
absolutely.
guy.
Absolutely. And then that's going to
Offensive
be
bright.
that's going to be something we talk about later cuz obviously we have Bryce Young on the notes today. So all right, moving on. We're going to talk about Chris Jones staying with the Chiefs. So, Patrick Mahomes said they're in for a three-peat this year. He signed a 5-year, $158 million, $95 million guaranteed. Well, I mean, how do you feel for Chris Jones on that?
I think all the Kansas City has proved all they need is Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, and Chris Jones, and they can continue to win Super Bowls.
Yeah.
That's all they need.
Absolutely. I think Chris Jones is probably going to play a major factor into that big three-peat for them if they try to go on and do it this year. Me personally, I don't think the Chiefs are going to do it. I think somebody's going to be the one to upset them. I think the upset's going to come in the conference championship game, but that's just me. But I do believe that Chris Jones, he's going to play a major factor in whether they make that three-peat this year or not.
I mean, you can't win it every year. So if they don't win it this year, I'm not going to be surprised. But I would never count out Patrick Mahomes, and I think Chris Jones is a game changer on the defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just he he dominates when he's on the field.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I
I
mean,
think he's
coming
worth
from
every
his
bit.
2023 stats, he had 10 and a half sacks with 13 tackles for loss. I mean, I feel like you couldn't ask for more with an interior D lineman. And I feel like Chris Jones is an elite interior D lineman.
He is best in the league. Maybe right only behind Aaron Donald. Um, he excels at what he does. He knows what he's doing, and I think that's with him. He sat out for was it the first week too, and
Yeah,
he still
yeah,
did that. So Chris Jones is worth every penny they gave him.
yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about, do you think Chris Jones is going to be able to live up to that 5-year contract that he gets, though?
Obviously, he is a little older player, so I don't know about the full 5 years. Short term though, it's definitely worth it. I'm sure he might stick around for the whole 5 years, but I I, I don't know if I see him for the whole five
Yeah,
years. Um, but definitely for like at least the next 2 to 3 years,
for
it's gonna
sure.
be worth it.
I would definitely say it really depends on what the Chiefs end up doing for the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, if they're still a Super Bowl contending team, who knows at that point if Chris Jones even wants to stay around? Maybe he feels like he might be able to go to a different team, possibly even get more money. Because who wouldn't want a lineman like Chris Jones on your line? So, and I mean, with the fact that by that time he could possibly even have 4 or 5 rings, depending on where he's at right now. I mean, at that point, I do feel as a player, you play for money. You have nothing left to prove.
Yep. At that point, just make sure you're set for retirement.
For sure. Moving on. So we have Calvin Ridley to the Titans today. He signed a 4-year, $92 million with a $50 million guaranteed. So I'm gonna start off with this one mostly because you see what I'm wearing. Calvin Ridley.
Oh,
Is Calvin Ridley good? Yes. Is Calvin Ridley elite? Me personally, I don't think so. I don't think Calvin Ridley is going to live up to that $92 million contract, and that's just me stating what I seen in Atlanta. Now, granted, he didn't have much time in Atlanta. He played, I believe, one full season. The next season is pretty much when he was going through the mental issues. I believe he said it was, and then he was suspended. So with that being said, in 2023, he had 76 receptions, 136 targets with 1,016 yards, 8 touchdowns. But now he's going to the Titans where he's going to be paired with DeAndre Hopkins. I think DeAndre Hopkins is a great receiver, but I mean, it's another situation to where I feel like DeAndre Hopkins is not elite anymore. And I mean, you may disagree with that, but I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, I feel like, is not the receiver that he was when he was in Houston. How do you feel?
I I think this signing is perfect. First off, it came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone expected him to go to Tennessee.
For sure.
Um, Came out of nowhere, but I think it's amazing. That's exactly what they needed. They have young quarterbacks. They also just signed Mason Rudolph at quarterback, which it's Will Levis's job. But they have young QBs there. They need weapons. Uh,
Agreed.
they have DeAndre Hopkins, who is, in my opinion, he's still an elite receiver. And then you got Calvin Ridley, who is borderline, like that next tier under borderline elite. Um, I think it's going to be amazing for him. Um, I think that this is it's a win-win situation for everybody involved.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so here's the big part of his contract, and which is why it really, kind of turned me away. With the contract signing with Calvin Ridley, he is now the second most guaranteed for any wide receiver, only behind Tyreek Hill. Are we really trying to say that Calvin Ridley and Tyreek Hill are on the same page?
No, not at all.
So, me personally, I think the Titans kind of overreached for him. I probably feel like they could have got less, could have got him for less, and I feel like they really just threw the bank at him and he took it.
No, so I'm pretty sure I've seen somewhere that Calvin really actually got offered more from Jacksonville, but he
Wow.
chose to go to Tennessee.
Wow.
Uh, he wanted Tennessee specifically. I think that I think the money's not that bad. I think the guarantee is a little high. Um, I think he's gonna be worth it though. I think obviously he might be the second highest right now, but Justin Jefferson's due for a contract. He's about to get paid.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I think it's smart for Tennessee to spend big money before Justin Jefferson gets paid, because when Justin Jefferson gets paid, there's it's gonna make the wide receiver market skyrocket with how much
Agreed.
he's gonna get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Justin Jefferson is definitely the person who deserves that type of contract. And this isn't me hating on Calvin Ridley. I mean, I bought his jersey. I loved him when he was with Atlanta. It's just from what I seen when he was a wide receiver one after Julio left. I mean, I just don't feel like he's capable of being that guy. And I mean, hopefully he proves me wrong. I mean, I love Calvin Ridley. I mean, if he can go to a different team and he can win a Super Bowl, obviously that's what I would love. Anybody that joins the Falcons, if they can leave the Falcons, because obviously they're not going to do it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I mean, if they're not going to be the ones to give him a ring, I mean, I would love anybody. I would love to see Julio go and get that ring. But I mean, honestly, I don't think we're at that situation anymore with him.
Calvin really does disappear at times. He
Yeah,
definitely disappears.
for sure. All right, so moving on from Calvin Ridley, we're going to talk about the Saquon Barkley to the Eagles.
Mm.
I think this is a great pickup for them. So before we start talking about that, they gave him a 3-year, $37.75 million contract with $26 million of it guaranteed. So before we get into it, last year he had 247 carries with 962 yards, 6 touchdowns, and paired with 280 receiving yards. I feel like that's really good. I mean, it's obviously not on the verge of being an elite running back, but I mean, I feel like that's really all you ask for in a running back.
I think Saquon Barkley is an elite running back.
For
That
sure.
stats may not have showed it last year. That Giants team it was terrible.
Yeah.
Um, Saquon Barkley is amazing. He is going to elevate that Eagles. You've seen what Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift could do
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
Philly. and Saquon Barkley is steps ahead of them, like way much better player and talented player than them. So seeing what he's going to be able to do behind the offensive line, even with Jason Kelsey gone, still going to be an amazing offensive line. And just seeing what Saquon's going to be able to do behind the offensive line is it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in that Eagles offensive line, I mean, they are brutal. I mean, even with Jason Kelsey being gone, I still think that they're going to be a top line in the league. Speaking of Jason Kelsey, he actually came out once he heard the news and said that this is the sad times about football, where I mean, he wishes like he could have had Saquon Barkley in his backfield, but unfortunately, it's not enough to come out of retirement for him. But hey,
Uh,
I think any center would love to play with someone like Saquon Barkley.
yes, Saquon is a game changer, and you will feel his presence on that field.
Absolutely. And I mean, I understand why the Giants let him go, but I mean, I definitely feel like the Giants maybe probably should have held on to him. I mean, letting him go to the Eagles, you're letting him go to somebody in your division. I definitely don't think that was smart. So I definitely felt like they probably should have done everything they could try to do to try to keep him,
I think they their quarterback situation's really bad right now because they
yeah.
already paid Daniel Jones,
Man,
and
they got Tommy DeVito though. Tommy
oh
DeVito's throwing.
come on, DeVito, come on now. They got Daniel Jones. They brung in Drew Lock.
Yeah.
They got young people there. They don't have their answer yet, but they have money tied to that position like they have the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's their issue.
And I think where the Giants went wrong, and it is kind of the same place of where I feel like, the Panthers are going to go wrong, and hopefully they don't. I feel like they invested too much money into Daniel Jones. I feel like maybe he had one good season and they thought he was that guy, and it turns out I mean, he's just not. So, I mean, his backup, and I mean, I don't know exactly what round Tommy DeVito was drafted in, but I want to say it was definitely late. It was either the fifth through the seventh. And I mean, he came in and he played better than somebody who's getting paid more than $100 million a year, and that's insane.
Yeah, you know, Daniel Jones got to step it up. He has not shown that that contract is anywhere near close to being worth it.
For sure. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about Patrick Queen to the Steelers. I know you're happy about that. So they gave Patrick Queen a 3-year, $41 million contract with 13.84 guaranteed, which I think the guaranteed, I mean, it's obviously not good for Patrick Queen. You wish you could get more. But as a Steelers fan, I feel like you couldn't ask for better. If he doesn't turn out to be, the guy and he gets hurt, whatever the case may be, I mean, you're not really spending a whole lot on him.
Patrick Queen is the guy.
For sure. Absolutely.
Patrick Queen is the guy. I am ecstatic. There's only I think the Steelers defense is really good. But we have been missing. There's two part. We're missing secondary depth, and we are missing linebackers badly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Linebackers what's been killing us. We value the position heavily. We spend money on it. We trade up in the draft like Devin Bush. We attempt to fill this spot and we haven't been able to for so long that we so desperately need. And Patrick Queen is the answer that we have been looking for. There's only
Absolutely.
the only bad thing about it is, it just sucks we can't see him and Trubisky teamed up because that was Trubisky's favorite. That was his favorite receiver, and now he's gone. It's just unfortunate they couldn't be on the team together.
Yeah, unfortunate, man. But I definitely think Patrick Queen is a great pickup for the Steelers. Obviously, I'm not a huge Steelers fan. We have our discussions and our rivalries, but I mean, I definitely think that is a great pickup for them. So, going off of his 2023 stats, he had 133 tackles, 49 of those were solo, and he had 3.5 sacks. So, I mean, and I feel like he's definitely going to be a great run stopper. He's going to be somebody to where he can blitz the A gap, he can blitz the B gap wherever you need him. Patrick Queen is going to be there. And I mean, he's got great speed. So this is something that I looked at earlier and I tracked down. He's just a little over 220 pounds and he runs a 4.5 40-yard dash. For people out there that don't know just how quick that is, Christian McCaffrey ran a 4.48. So we have a linebacker out here chasing Christian McCaffrey's in the backfield. I feel like that is going to be the highlight of the Steelers' defense.
Patrick Queen is going to be everywhere on that field. You you watch the Steelers game, you will hear Patrick Queen's game name all game long.
Oh, absolutely, and I definitely believe that. All right, so moving on to somebody who the league has loved for many years, Derrick Henry to the Ravens. I'm sure you're not too happy about that being a Steelers fan.
King Henry.
So he's got a 2-year, $16 million contract with $9 million of it guaranteed. But Derrick Henry is 30 years old. How do you feel about Derrick Henry to the Ravens?
Derrick Henry is still an elite running back. in my opinion, best in the league. That Titans offensive line is terrible, and Derrick Henry still looked good. So, um, I think him going to Baltimore, I think it's him, Lamar Jackson. I mean, there's no way you could stop him.
Right.
You also got like Zay Flowers on the outside, Rashad Bateman. You got Devin Duvernay there. You got they got good receivers. They
For
got the
sure.
receivers. They got the running back. They got the quarterback. They got Mark Andrews at tight end. They have so many weapons on offense now that there's no way defenses are going to be able to stop them.
Right.
It's very similar to the San Francisco 49ers.
So what I think is going to be such a good thing for Derrick Henry this year is opposed from the Titans, he's not really going to be 100% the main back. Now, obviously, he's going to be the main running back because at the end of the day, he's Derrick Henry. But he is going to be paired with, the rookie Keaton Mitchell. And if anybody watched any of the games last year from Keaton Mitchell, he is fast. So, I mean, I definitely feel like, in your first down, second down places, that's where Keaton Mitchell might come in. He might get you those 5 or 6 yards. And here comes Derrick Henry pounding for the rest. So, I mean, I definitely feel like that was a great pickup. That was a great signing for him. And I think Derrick Henry is going to do great at the Ravens.
Keaton Mitchell and Derrick Henry is going to be an amazing one-two punch. Um, it's going to be fun to watch Baltimore. Sad to watch Steelers in Baltimore.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about Derrick Henry. He led the league in carries in 2019, 2020, 2022, and 2023. Now, obviously, leading the league in carries, it's like, okay, they're overusing him. He's not going to be as good as he once was because of that situation. But he led in yards and touchdowns in 2019 and 2020. Do you think with him going to the Ravens, we're going to see that Derrick Henry back?
I don't think he's going to get as much production as was on the Titans. He is getting on up there in age. He's running back. I mean, their bodies tear down quickly.
Yeah,
Um, he's not going to get as many touches as he was. And you also they have a big run game there with Lamar, Keaton Mitchell. They had J.K. Dobbins. They have a big running game that they run the ball a lot
yeah.
and very efficiently. He's going to get the ball. He's going to get a good amount, but it's not going to be every single snap like it was in Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other thing that I'd like to talk about with Derrick Henry going to the Ravens is, I've seen a lot on X or formerly known as Twitter, whatever people call it these days, is with Lamar Jackson primarily being a running quarterback. How do you feel that that's going to work out with, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry trying to clash together to get the ball back there?
I think as long I don't Derrick Henry doesn't really seem like a diva kind of player where he has to have the ball. I
Right.
think he just wants the team in general to succeed.
Yeah.
And if Lamar's holding onto the ball and gets yards, I don't think Derrick Henry's gonna have an issue with it. Um, Now I could see if Lamar's trying to take take the ball and he's not going nowhere, and Derrick Henry's not getting the ball, he might have an issue with it then.
Yeah.
But I feel like as long as the team is succeeding, Derrick Henry's gonna be fine with taking a step back and not getting 35 touches a game.
Absolutely, and I mean, and if he's wanting the team to succeed, I mean, I know you probably don't want to hear it, but what better place to go than the Ravens? I mean, I feel like they are probably just a running back away, even though they got Lamar, but they needed a true running back, and I feel like now that they finally got that, they're a dangerous team.
I see that comment. They need a running back, but they got Lamar.
All right, so moving on, the controversy. I mean, obviously, you and I both know, a huge Panthers fan. We're going to talk about Brian Burns and Carolina Panthers. So Brian Burns going to the Giants for a second and a fifth. They extended his contract. It's a 5 year, $141 million, 87.5 of that guaranteed. How do you feel about that contract for the Giants?
I think Brian Burns is an amazing player. He's up and coming. He's still young, and he's shown that he's got it in him to be an elite pass rusher.
For sure.
Um, Elite pass rushers don't become available often. To get him for a second and a fifth round pick is insane.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I think Carolina, they made a mistake letting Brian Burns walk, and they will be feeling it for a very long time when they attempt to replace him and struggle.
Yeah, and I mean, me personally, I don't think Carolina is going to be able to fill that void for quite some time. Missing Brian Burns, that's somebody who they got for a steal in the draft, and somebody who turned out to be an absolute stud of a player. You don't let stud of a player walk for a second and a fifth. The fact that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Rams tried to offer 3 firsts a couple of years ago and they turned it down. I just think that they're in a situation now to where Carolina Panthers are going to be in cap room hell, and they're going to be in a hell of a situation for the years to come because they're betting all their money on Bryce Young, and I don't think it's going to turn out well for the Panthers.
Personally, I think Bryce Young I think he's gonna be a bust.
I do too.
Too early to say it. He still has. There's potential. But I personally believe it's not working out for Bryce Young. If I didn't like what I saw this past year.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, what I tell everybody that I've seen with the Panthers games is Bryce Young hasn't shown any flashes. Now, granted, he might have those one or two plays, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I could probably go in there and make one or two plays in the NFL if I played 17 games. But but look, man,
uh,
what I'm trying to get at is, even if Bryce Young has had one or two good plays, it doesn't mean that he's gonna be the guy. It was what I'm really trying to get at is I feel like the Panthers were absolutely dead wrong in trading up to number one, and I feel like they probably took the 10th overall quarterback. I feel like there was probably at least two or three other quarterbacks that could have went before Bryce Young, and I feel like the Panthers have really given up a lot to get a number one overall pick to get a guy who I don't think is going to be there past his rookie contract.
nope. Bryce Young. He's got no excuses this year. They went out and got Deontay Johnson. They got Adam Thielen, who excels from the slot. Their running back position, they got a lot of money tied to Miles Sanders.
Right?
They still got Chuba Hubbard, who looked pretty decent last year. They got a
Absolutely.
lot of money on their offensive line now. Offensive line is looks like it should be really good this year.
Yeah.
The issue is they're taking steps forward on offense to help Bryce Young, but they're taking steps backwards on defense to do that.
Absolutely.
Um,
And then that's actually what we were just about to get on. I feel like letting go of Dante Jackson, correct me? Yep, Dante Jackson. I feel like letting go of, probably your arguably number two, number one corner for, you know, Dante Johnson. I don't think that was a good idea, but I mean, hey, Carolina Panthers have been nothing but bad ideas over the last couple of years. So,
the issue, they need a receiver badly.
yeah,
I understand why they did it. Dante Jackson's also he had a high cap hit, so I don't think it was like I said I don't think it was terrible,
right.
but I think it's terrible considering that they already lost Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin, Yetur Gross-Matos, Frankie Louvu. They've already lost all these other pieces,
Yeah,
Von Bell, and then they trade away their best corner debatably with J.C. Horn.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
makes no sense. I have no idea what they're gonna make their defense terrible to see if Bryce Young can make the offense work.
And then
But
the issue is, go ahead.
you can't you can't have a terrible defense and still win a Super Bowl. You
Fact.
can't do
Absolutely.
it.
And then I think what the issue is a lot of, the Panthers fans are like, okay, well, we'll find this person in the draft or, we'll do this person in the draft. You gave away all your draft picks. You know what I mean? Like you gave all of your real estate for Bryce Young. And Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers just went 2-15. We were talking with a Panthers fan earlier today, and I personally don't see the Panthers going any more than 3 or 4 wins this year.
Um, it's insane to me that they traded Chris McCaffrey and Brian Burns and have not received a single first round pick.
Absolutely. So
Eh,
I'm glad you mentioned that. So let's talk about the Luke Combs tweet earlier today. So obviously, the megastar, country star, Luke Combs. He's going to tweet at the Panthers. What are we doing? No first round pick for McCaffrey a few years back, and now none for Burns. Are we just firebombing the whole team here, or what? I usually don't comment on these kinds of things, but it's just becoming slow torture at this point. And I would absolutely have to agree with Luke Combs. It is becoming slow torture. Now, me as a Falcons fan, I hope they continue becoming slow torture. I hope it becomes even more slow torture. I hope that this extends all the way to 2030 and it's the worst kind of torture that Panthers fans have ever seen. On a real
um,
note.
I'm a Steelers fan, not a Panther hater. Completely different conference. I just think I do want the Panthers to succeed because hometown team. Not a fan of them, but hometown team. I want to see them succeed. They're just they make stupid decisions.
I agree.
You want to save all this cap on defense specifically with not signing Jeremy Chin and not signing Brian Burns, but you're not even keeping the reasonably reasonably priced players on your defense, like Frankie Louvu, who is such a big part of that defense,
Right.
who wouldn't have been crazy expensive, and they still didn't sign him. It's insane
Absolutely
to me.
agree. So, I mean, and, obviously the Panthers, they cleaned house last season. They got rid of their coach, got rid of the general manager. But now we're in a situation to where we're bringing in new coaches and new general managers, and we're making the same mistakes. So, just me personally, I don't see the Carolina Panthers being in that quote unquote rebuild. I feel like until they get some competent people in house, they're never really going to be able to clearly rebuild. Now, obviously, in a business situation, maybe you have to make tough choices to move ahead in the future. But as a fan outside looking in, I feel like they are not making the right decisions towards a complete rebuild.
Their owner, David Tepper, he needs to take a step back. He's getting too involved in it, and he needs to take a step back.
Absolutely. I agree. All right, so moving on from the Carolina Panthers and the Luke Combs tweet, let's talk about Russell Wilson, another Steelers. They just gave him a 1 year, $1.21 million contract. Wow. I mean, that is basically nothing in the NFL. I mean, we have backups who won't ever see the field that are making more than Russell Wilson, a two-time, correct me if I'm wrong, two-time Super Bowl winner. So, I mean, I'm just, I understand from Russell Wilson's perspective is, he feels like it was going to be easier for him to hit a different team with taking the league minimum. But I do also feel like at the end of the day, you're a two-time Super Bowl winner, Russell Wilson. You definitely could have got more, but I mean, hey, the Steelers got a steal on that, and let's hear your take on it.
Russell Wilson wasn't worried about the money. He's gotten paid throughout his whole career, and Denver still owes him a lot of money. I don't know the
Yeah,
exact amount, but a
I'm
lot of money
glad you
this year.
mentioned it. He is still being paid $37.79 million by the Broncos.
So Denver is still paying him a lot of money this year. So it's not about the money. Russell Wilson wants a contending team and a chance to start. He has both of those with Pittsburgh Steelers.
I would
Steelers
agree
were in the hardest division in football and had 10 wins last season.
for sure.
So we're a
So,
contending team. We are a good team, as well as we are. Our quarterback situation isn't 100%. Um, him and Kenny Pickett will be battling it out in training camp, which is what he wanted, a fight for the starting position,
right.
and he has that with Kenny Pickett.
Absolutely. And I mean, seeing what I've seen from Kenny Pickett last season, by no means do I think Kenny Pickett is a terrible or a horrible quarterback. But do I think Kenny Pickett needs to learn behind a veteran? Absolutely. I think that is going to be a complete growth for Kenny Pickett. And it really just depends on what the Steelers want to do from here. I mean, Kenny Pickett could, learn behind Russell Wilson for the next year, maybe two, depending on what the Steelers decide to do with him and how far they go throughout the regular season. But I mean, I definitely think that at the end of the day, Kenny Pickett can maybe even be a great quarterback once he learned behind somebody who has experience.
I think that's definitely a downside. He didn't have a veteran quarterback on the roster when he came. Um, I feel like people, the players benefit a lot by having a veteran quarterback on the roster. I think Kenny Pickett. I have hope. There's hope for Kenny Pickett. Last year was not great.
Agreed.
He needs to be more productive with and and scoring. He needs to score more.
Right.
Uh, and now I want to say it was the offensive coordinator, but at the end of the day, those are all excuses.
Right.
Kenny has to produce more points.
Absolutely.
Russell Wilson being there, either Russell Wilson can start or Russell Wilson could light a fire up or light a fire under Kenny Pickett's ass and make him step it up and be that player that the Pittsburgh thought he was going to be when we drafted him.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of pivoting back to Russell Wilson here for a minute, let's talk about his 2023 stats because I feel like everybody really just discredited Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. And I feel like a lot of that came due to his contract. Because if we actually look at the stats of Russell Wilson, by no means were they bad. There was probably maybe at least 15 other quarterbacks in the NFL that were worse stats. But I feel like with the type of contract that Russell Wilson got and just the media attention that it came from Sean Payton and the rest of everybody else over there in the Broncos organization, I feel like it just made Russell Wilson look bad. So let's talk about his 2023 stats for a minute. He had 297 completions and 447 attempts, which is 3,070 yards with a 66.4% completion rate. I think as a quarterback in the NFL, you should never complain about a 66.4% completion rate. I mean, by no means do I think that is top 10 quarterback, but by no means do I think you are a bottom five quarterback. And I felt like that's the way Russell Wilson was treated in Denver.
Russell Wilson is uh we know he's got it in him from his days in Seattle.
Yeah,
He's got elite play in him. Denver wasn't the greatest situation. I'm gonna hope and choose it was the situation and not Russell Wilson taking being that bad.
right,
Uh, he declined. I think he's not gonna be as good as he was in Seattle. I think he has declined, but I don't think he's declined that much like he looked in Denver.
right,
I think
absolutely.
Pittsburgh Steelers, he's gonna take a step up. Not quite that Seattle level, but I think he's gonna take a step up, and I'm excited to see it.
So I think the main thing that's going to be really a deciding factor in Pittsburgh is, are they going to be able to protect Russell Wilson? Let's talk about his sacks while he was in Denver. In 2023, he was sacked 45 times. In 2022, he was sacked 55 times. I think that is unreal for, a quarterback to get hit that many times throughout a season. I definitely feel like Denver did not do a great job of protecting him and making sure he had ample amount of time to get rid of the ball. Now, granted, I mean, we've seen a lot of things on social media throughout the year that, the offensive line had basically given up, or the team had given up on Russell Wilson. So, I mean, it's really hard to determine if, maybe that was some type of payback towards Russell Wilson, or maybe was it just, the line wasn't there. So, if we look at the defensive rankings for the Broncos, he was at a 29 when he was with Denver. He's now going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the defensive ranking last year was 21. And I mean, possibly even higher now with the pickup of Patrick Queen. And who knows what can come in the weeks.
You can't forget Dante Jackson.
Absolutely.
Um, I think it's definitely a much better team today. Pittsburgh, it's a winning culture in Pittsburgh. We always win. We always find ways to get wins. It's been it's been some time since we were Super Bowl contenders. So, um, Russell Wilson, I'm hoping is that guy to put us back in Super Bowl conversations. Um, I can't wait. Now the offensive line is questionable with
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. Um, specifically at center and tackle.
Yeah.
Um, that's questionable. We have we have we have to look in the draft as well. I'm hoping some free agents. Um, we're not. We have an incomplete offensive line, but we have the offensive line and Steelers always perform better than we expect it to on paper.
Agreed.
We are a very well coached team. Um, Mike Tomlin knows what he's doing, and I think he'll put Russell Wilson in the best possible position to succeed.
All right. So speaking of coach, let's go off the topic a little bit in the notes that we have over here, and let's talk a little bit about Arthur Smith going to the Steelers. Now, obviously, I've seen a lot of Arthur Smith over the last 3 years, watching almost every Falcons game. How do you feel that Arthur Smith is going to perform with Mike Tomlin now that he's going back to offensive coordinator, no longer in that head coach role?
Arthur Smith was a very good offensive coordinator in Tennessee. If he can do what he did in Tennessee and Pittsburgh, I'm happy. Um, don't want to see what he did in Atlanta. I think Atlanta, his issue was s- he was he put all his money on Desmond Ritter,
Yeah,
and Desmond Ritter was not the guy.
no, not
As
at all.
well as Marcus Mariota, who was also not the guy. But Mariota was supposed to be a bridge player until he got the guy.
For sure.
Um, Arthur Smith, I think recency bias. It looks bad. Recently, he has not been good.
Yeah,
If you take back on his resume, he's got a good resume. He's got a winning resume. He he can have a good offense. When he was with Tennessee, they were number one seed. They he knows what to do. He can get a high scoring offense. I just don't want people to get too stuck up on what he did in Atlanta.
yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of, transition back to this a little bit. I know you mentioned how, Arthur Smith was the number one seed and what he did in Tennessee. Let's go back to, the Derrick Henry stats that I had over here. And he led the league in yards and touchdowns, or excuse me, in yards and touchdowns in 2019 and 2020. And that was obviously when Arthur Smith was there as the offensive coordinator. What do you see that Arthur Smith is going to be able to do without a Derrick Henry in the Steelers offense?
He doesn't have a Derrick Henry, but he still has a very good two running backs with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Neither of them are Najee, or neither of them are Derrick. We know that.
Right.
Um, but they are still very good running backs, very consistent running backs, and they don't they don't have an injury history.
Mm-hmm.
We also have two quarterbacks that are good on their legs, which he does like to do play action and stuff. Um, we have Russell Wilson, who's quick with his feet. We also have Kenny Pickett, who's quick with his feet. Um, I think it's it's not going to be as good as it was in Tennessee. I'm not expecting him to be because he doesn't have Derrick Henry. He
Right.
can't hand it to Najee Harris 30 times a game and end up with 200 yards like he could with Derrick Henry.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about expectations now that you mention it. What is your expectations for the Steelers for 2024?
I want a playoff win. If we do not get a playoff win, it is a bad season. It is a terrible season.
Okay.
We are. I'm not expecting Super Bowl. I want playoff win. I want to see improvement in the quarterback position specifically. I think we also now with getting rid of Deontay Johnson, we we need receiver now.
Yeah.
And we need receiver help. We also released Allen Robinson. So we need receiver help to help our quarterback position. Um, I'm expecting my prediction. I think Russell Wilson. I think Kenny Pickett will start the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Kenny Pickett week 3 or week 4 isn't getting the ball rolling, that's when we bring Russell Wilson in
Wow.
and see what Russell Wilson can do. That's
So
my
so
prediction.
you think that they signed Russell Wilson to be Kenny Pickett's backup?
Not to be Kenny Pickett's backup, to be Kenny Pickett's um insurance.
Okay. All right. I like the
I
way you
think
word that.
he's the insurance to guarantee that if Kenny's not getting the job done, we have another person that just might get the job done.
So from the sounds of it, you think Kenny Pickett is going to win training camp, and
Uh,
you think Kenny Pickett is going to be that guy?
Kenny Pickett, if you look at what he did before the season and the preseason, he had an elite performance in the preseason.
Okay.
Obviously, it's preseason.
Yeah.
Preseason doesn't matter, but it showed if you it showed that he looks good in practice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think he will get the starting position. Um, I think Russell Wilson will have to fight to. Russell Wilson has a difficult fight to get the starting position.
Yeah.
We also just drafted him in the first round a couple years ago. We don't want to give up on him too soon.
Completely agree. I feel
So
like you guys are the same situation. Well, I don't want to say same because I mean nobody should be in the same situation as Carolina Panthers. But I do feel like you guys, you kind of went with your guy, and now you have to mold him. You have to see if he's going to turn into that guy. And I think with Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh, trying to elevate Kenny Pickett and trying to make him turn into the star that he could and should be. I mean, I think that's great for them.
the difference between the Steelers and Panthers, though, the Steelers went out and got competition at quarterback.
Right.
We we want to get better. We're not saying, hey, our team is all depends on Kenny Pickett. No, we are not completely relying on Kenny Pickett. We are attempting to get other people there. That if Kenny Pickett doesn't work out, we have another option.
Yeah.
Carolina is 100% sold on Bryce Young, as you would expect for a number one overall pick. Um, Pittsburgh is not doing that. We are looking at other options just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of going back to Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. Really, I would just like to get your input on this. We kind of both grew up in a time to where we've seen the Cleveland Browns be the very bottom of the league. We've seen the 0-16 seasons. I mean, we've seen the Browns really go through a lot of struggles, which I mean, it looks like they're on the come up now. So, good for the Cleveland Browns and the Browns fans, happy for them. But all those years that the Cleveland Browns, picked first overall, and every time they would try to take their number one guy and it just never panned out. Do you think that was a Browns issue, or do you think that it's not always just picking first and hoping you got your guy like how the Carolina Panthers think they did?
I think it's I think it's a coaching issue.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's what been the issue in Carolina, and I think that was what the issue in Cleveland at the time was as well. You have to the coaching these players is the most important part. Um, I think Carolina, now I do think Carolina, the coaching staff. I do have a little bit more faith in it this year than previous years.
yeah,
Um, I like I like some of the coaching changes they made this season. Um, but just because you take a guy number one overall doesn't mean he's the guy.
for sure. And I completely agree. And talking a little bit more about the coaching, I mean, as an Atlanta fan, I got to witness, Marcus Mariota after Matt Ryan, witness Taylor Heineke, Desmond Ritter. And at the end of the day, I mean, I do think coaching plays a really big part in that. I think any player can succeed if they have a great coach behind them, and we've kind of seen that with infamous teams like with Kansas City Chiefs. Now, by no means do I think that Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback. I mean, I think Patrick Mahomes could pretty much win a Super Bowl anywhere he goes. But how successful would Patrick Mahomes be if he wasn't with Andy Reid? And vice versa for the many years that we've seen it. How successful would Tom Brady have been without Bill Belichick? And I
Uh,
mean, obviously, we did see that.
The perfect situation is San Francisco. Brock Purdy looks amazing because he's got Kyle
Absolutely,
Shanahan. That's the
absolutely,
perfect example.
absolutely. So, I mean, do you think Brock Purdy could succeed on any 31 other NFL teams?
No, Brock Purdy is not getting it done without Kyle Shanahan. Um, I, Coaching is the most important part
Agreed.
of a team. Brock
Absolutely.
Purdy is not an elite player. Shanahan's an elite coach and gets the best out of his players.
So, with that being said, us transition a little bit back to Atlanta. I mean, because we're getting ready to talk about Kirk Cousins. So, before we talk about Kirk Cousins, though, let's talk about how Desmond Ritter, I definitely think probably if he had a better coach, could have been a better star. By no means do I think Desmond Ritter is going to be, league MVP, but I do believe Falcons were maybe one of the only, if not, very minimum teams in the NFL that didn't have a quarterback coach last season. And me personally, from what I've seen from Arthur Smith, I don't think that he really did his due diligence, making sure that Desmond Ritter was the guy. So before the season even started, and I believe we talked about this the other day, Arthur Smith never even wanted Desmond Ritter as the starting quarterback. They attempted to contact Matt Ryan. He declined coming back. They were very high on CJ Stroud in the draft, but I mean, going from 8 to I believe number 2, where Houston picked CJ Stroud, it was just going to give up too much real estate. And again, at the end of the day, you never know what you're going to take because look at Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young. So I do feel that maybe Arthur Smith could possibly do something different in Pittsburgh because they don't have Desmond Ritter, and I mean at the end of the day, that's just the truth. But talking about that, let's talk about Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, to take over that role for Desmond Ritter. So Kirk Cousins has a 4-year, $180 million deal with $100 million of it guaranteed. And me personally, as an Atlanta fan, I think that's insane. I think Kirk Cousins is elite. I think he's probably a top 10 quarterback. But do I think Kirk Cousins was worth $180 million? Probably not. I do think that probably here over the next 2 or 3 years, we're gonna see the impact it's gonna take on our team. So now that Kyle Pitts is gonna have his contract coming up, we're gonna have Drake London's contract coming up here soon. How much of that are we really gonna be able to afford and tank out now that we've just gave Kirk Cousins such a big deal? But let's talk about
Uh,
his 2023 stats real quick. So in 2023, Kirk Cousins played 8 games before he left with an Achilles injury. He had 216 completions, 311 attempts, and that was 2,331 yards with a 69.5% completion rate. I definitely think that's great. I mean that is wonderful for 8 games. So here's what I actually did the math on for Kirk Cousins. He was on pace to have 4,662 yards, 36 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. If Kirk Cousins could have put up that kind of seasons with the Vikings, absolutely. I mean, I think you're elite and you deserve that. But who's to say what could have really happened? And also, transitioning, we don't have Justin Jefferson on our team. We have Drake London. Now, by no means am I trashing Drake London because I think Drake London is a great receiver. But over the last 2 years, Drake London has, kind of been a 900-yard guy. Now, is he a 900-yard guy because he has Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ritter throwing to him? Don't know. So that's going to be what we really see this year with Kirk Cousins, and I'm excited for it, but I kind of wish it would have been a little bit on the lower end of the scale because now that's going to make Kirk Cousins top 5 paid quarterback in the NFL, and I don't think he's worth that.
I think Kirk Cousins is gonna ball. Kirk Cousins is gonna ball in Atlanta. I think he is worth the money. I think he gives y'all a good chance of winning.
Right.
The contract the way it's set up, you do have an out after a couple years.
Yeah.
You
After
can
3
cut
years.
him. Yeah, you can cut him and it ain't gonna hurt you too much.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think you need a quarterback that can sling that ball to Drake London and to Kyle Pitts and hit Bijan out of the backfield. You need those guys.
Yeah.
You need someone like that that can really get them the ball, which is what Desmond Ritter was unable to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, I feel like Kirk Cousins, I mean, he makes stars. So, even though, I mean, Justin Jefferson had a great season last season when Kirk Cousins went down, but I mean, it wasn't the typical Justin Jefferson that we know that had, 1,800 yards in 2022. I believe Justin Jefferson only had a little over 1,000 yards, and by no means do I think that is bad for a wide receiver. But only having 1,000 yards, it kind of goes to prove that was it Kirk Cousins or was it Justin Jefferson? So I mean, I think that's going to be good to see with the Vikings this year, and kind of see what Justin Jefferson can do without Kirk Cousins, or maybe even the Falcons might go in on Justin Jefferson because he said Kirk Bangs was his guy, man. He didn't want to see him leave, and he's real upset about it from what I'm hearing all over X and Twitter. You know, people are saying Justin Jefferson isn't happy. And that he's upset with the organization that they didn't do everything they could to try to keep Kirk Cousins in the building. So we'll see how that plays out.
I think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football. There's no way Minnesota's just going to let him walk. They're going to do whatever they have to do to keep him happy because they need Justin Jefferson.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about Kirk Cousins. Do you think Kirk Cousins is going to be able to take Atlanta to the playoffs this year?
Yes, I think he will take them to the playoffs and not only take them there, I think he has a chance of winning a few of the games.
Absolutely, and that's kind of my situation, and why I was so against the Kirk Cousins pay that he got is I believe over the last 12 years that Kirk Cousins has been in the league, he's won one playoff game. Now, is that a situation to where maybe it's now granted when Kirk Cousins was with the Commanders, as formerly known, they weren't really a playoff team. So, and they didn't really become that playoff team until Kirk Cousins left and he went to Minnesota. And we did see Minnesota become that playoff team. Now, was Minnesota that playoff team because of Kirk Cousins, or was it because of everybody they put around Kirk Cousins? So, and I think that's going to be great to see in Atlanta this year. Personally, where I feel with Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, the money that we've paid him and the stats we've seen him put up in the past, if we don't at least go to the NFC Championship game, it's a failed season.
Yeah, I think you got you got so much money tied to Kirk Cousins. You want a you want a Super Bowl within the next couple years.
Yeah.
That's what y'all are aiming for. Um, I think you have the roster. Uh, I think the coaching situation is better now. I think Kirk Cousins is the only quarterback available right now that you could have gotten to get you there.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
I think it's your best option.
Yeah. So, and that was actually going to be my next talking point is I don't want everybody listening to think that, I'm completely against Kirk Cousins and I'm one of the upset, Falcons fans who no matter who they signed, I was going to be upset with. When the news first came out that we signed Kirk Cousins, I was ecstatic. Like I said, at the end of the day, it comes down to the money situation, and I'm worried about the cap. Now, I do believe that, Terry Fontenot, the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, he's made great moves since he's joined it 2 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years ago, actually. And I think Terry Fontenot is going to continue to cook, as they say. Um, I'm definitely on board with Kirk Cousins more than I was Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is a great quarterback, but I mean, as we can see, a whole lot of people don't necessarily think that. Obviously, no team has decided to take Justin Fields, and it's kind of a situation to where this is a do or die for Justin Fields this year. If Justin Fields doesn't, go out there and put up numbers this year, that is, if Chicago even gives him the chance. I mean, if for all we know, they could take Caleb Williams at number one, and Justin Fields is now the backup. I mean that's a real possibility that we're looking at. So, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I'm completely against the Kirk Cousins signing because I mean I'm all for it. I do think that witnessing what I've seen over the last few years, it's hard to find a quarterback in the draft, especially when you're kind of picking in that mid range. You need good scouts, and I don't think with the new coaching that we have in the building that we have the scouts available enough to go out there and decide in 2 or 3 months who isn't the guy. That's something you build kind of for years, and I think the Falcons have done a great choice in picking Kirk Cousins because I don't think picking somebody in the draft right now is going to be where it was going to be for us.
No, I think quarterback. It's hard. It's the hardest position to get.
Yeah,
Uh, you have a guy like Kirk Cousins in free agency. That doesn't happen every day. I think he is an unbelievable player. Um, that I think was smart for y'all to sign, and that y'all needed very badly.
absolutely. All right, so it doesn't look like we have anything left on the notes. Is there anything you really want to talk about? Maybe some predictions for NFL teams. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I want to say one thing.
Okay, let's
Wherever
hear it.
wherever Justin Fields goes, I think he starts the season as the backup.
Wow, that's your prediction.
I think Justin Fields starts this season being a backup, whether it's on the Bears or another team.
Okay, absolutely. So, I mean, it is, it's after midnight now. So it's March 14th, 2024. And Caleb is making a prediction that Justin Fields is going to be a backup no matter where he goes.
I think he can compete for that starting job,
Yeah.
but he will start the season as a backup.
Okay, so let's say they decide to keep him and they go and draft Caleb Williams. Do you think Caleb Williams is going to sit behind Justin Fields, or is Justin Fields going to sit behind Caleb Williams?
Justin Fields will sit behind Caleb Williams. Um, Caleb Williams gets hurt, Justin Fields come in, plays, and then if he does well, they could trade him for a good draft pick.
Okay, so now that
I,
we're on the topic of it a little bit, let's talk about Caleb Williams and some other draft picks. Who do you think? Obviously, you think Caleb Williams is going number one overall to Chicago. Who do you think
yes,
is going to be that number two quarterback?
I'm still going Drake May.
You're going Drake May. Okay.
Commanders are taking Drake May.
So I'm hearing some things about the Commanders are wanting to trade back. How do you feel about that? Do you think they're going
Uh,
to go Drake May or are they trading back?
I think I don't think they're going to trade back. I could see them potentially taking Jaden Daniels over Drake May.
Hmm.
I could see that potentially happening. I think Sam Howell looked okay last year. I don't think it's because of him. I think it was personally. I think it was because Eric Bieniemy, which they no longer have on that team. Um, I think they need a quarterback.
Agreed.
They need an entire change on that team. The team is very far behind the rest
Yeah.
of the league, and has been for a very long time. They need a quarterback desperately. Sam Howell, I think he played okay last year. Don't think he's the guy.
I was just about to ask. I mean, because obviously I'm not a you know Commanders fan, so I haven't watched every game of Sam Howell. But I did watch the game of Sam Howell against the Atlanta Falcons, and it upset me. Sam Howell, as almost every backup quarterback alike does to the Falcons defense. He came in and I believe he put up 3 or 4 touchdowns, and that made me think right there that maybe Sam Howell could be the guy somewhere. Do you think Sam Howell? Do you think he stays with the Commanders? Does he get traded?
I think Sam Howell will be the backup for the Commanders.
Okay.
Um, I think I don't think no, right now a team will trade for him. I don't think Sam Howell is a. I think at the beginning of the season you may like, oh, is he a starting? Is he
Yeah.
the guy? I think we realize he's not the guy. Um, he was a product of the system they have down there in Washington with Eric Bieniemy. Um, I think Sam Howell he's a backup quarterback.
I think my opinion on it is if Sam Howell can have the right coaching staff around him, he could be a top 15. Now, by no means am I saying he's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, but do I think Sam Howell will go out there and win you games when he needs you? I think he can do it. So, I mean, I'm excited to see what the Commanders do, and I'm excited to see what, possibly happens with Sam Howell because from what I witnessed in that Falcons game, a lot of people talk about observing flashes and seeing what a player can do and what they're capable of, and I seen that against the Falcons, and I think Sam Howell could be a player for somebody one day if somebody was to give him the chance.
Yep. I think I think he does have it. He's got something in him. I personally just think he's going to be a backup. But if you told me he was in 2, 3 years he was starting for a team, I'd be happy for the guy, and I wouldn't be completely surprised.
All right, so let's go. Who do you think quarterback number 3 is going to be off the board?
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. Okay.
Jaden
So
Daniels.
funny enough, I actually thought now I was seeing a lot of things and I was kind of hoping this was the case before we went out and got Kirk Cousins, but by no means do I think we're going for a quarterback in the draft now. That the Patriots are wanting to trade back and they were possibly talking to the Atlanta Falcons about trading back to them. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. Do you think the Patriots are going to stay at number 3 or do you think that, they're going to trade back?
I think with them trading Mac Jones, it shows that they're going to get a quarterback.
Yeah,
It shows that in the draft they are drafting quarterback, and teams do not trade down to select quarterbacks. So I
right.
think they're going to stay put at 3, take whichever quarterback falls to them, whether it's Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and that's who they're going to select with the third overall pick.
So where is Pittsburgh picking in the draft?
Pick 20.
Pick 20. So what do you see Pittsburgh taking at pick number 20?
I'm really thinking it's going to be a Marius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia.
Okay,
He's a right tackle. We put him at right tackle, and we can move Broderick Jones back to left tackle, his original position.
gotcha.
And then I, we have the Georgia tackles, and really try to get this offensive line figured out.
So you think you guys are going line first round?
That's what I think. We had a chance of taking corner, but after we traded for Dante Jackson, I think we need tackle
Okay,
desperately.
absolutely. So I think my predictions for the Falcons, I do believe that at pick number 8, I would like to see them go with Dallas Turner, edge rusher. I think Dallas Turner is going to be absolutely amazing to pair with Grady Jarrett if Grady Jarrett does decide to come back this year, which I mean it's looking more likely. You pair him with David Onyemata and the rest of that defensive line, and I think that they could be elite. Especially, picking up a young pass rusher like that. And Atlanta hasn't had a good pass rusher in quite some time. So that is something they definitely need. But I do think that Atlanta is going to go best available at number 8. That was kind of Arthur Smith what he loved to say that he always did. He took best available. I mean, I love Kyle Pitts. Do I think Kyle Pitts should have won it 4? It's here to say. Never know. But I mean, I'm glad we got him. With that being said, I think the Falcons are also going to go best available at number 8. It depends who falls to them. I mean, I think Falcons need another receiver. They need a very elite receiver. But I also think that it's pretty receiver heavy in this draft, so I think maybe you could fall to round 2 and maybe take a receiver. I definitely think, my personal opinion, that the Falcons are probably going to go defense and pick number 8.
I think they should go defense every year, and they always go offense and surprise me. I have no predictions with the Falcons. I don't even want to make a prediction.
I mean, I completely agree with that because every year, we think, okay, this is going to be the year that we take an elite pass rusher. Next thing you know, we're drafting Bijan Robinson. And again,
Yeah,
I love Bijan Robinson to death, but when you have somebody like Tyler Algier already in the backfield, I don't think that was a pick that we absolutely needed to do. But hey, maybe Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris can turn this around and they can make the Falcons a Super Bowl contender. And who cares what the picks happen with Arthur Smith and the pass regimen. So
the Falcons have a very bright future.
hey, look, that's the first time we've been able to say that since the Super Bowl. So we'll see. All right,
Yep.
almost to the end. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, I mean that was a lot, man. We've been talking. It's almost an hour now. So I mean, this is going to be a weekly thing for everybody out there. We're definitely going to always try to. We're going to be coming up with a Twitter here in the next couple days. We're going to try to have some type of information going out there for people, during the week. That way, people will be able to stay updated instead of just through the podcast. So we're gonna have that coming out here soon. We are gonna try to do, or not try to do. We are going to do the podcast every week. It's probably gonna be between, what do you say, Caleb? Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'd say Thursday.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So, all right. Well, I mean, if there's nothing else you can add, I definitely appreciate everybody tuning in to the Benchwarmers podcast. And I mean, make sure you're back week number 2.
Thank you.